All right. Hey, all you cool cats and kittens. This is Mrs. Allgood with your last section of notes in this beloved plant unit. So today we're just going to talk a little bit about the transport of sugars. Yesterday we talked about transpiration, which involved the transport of water and other minerals from the roots. Couple things to keep in mind. I believe your plant hormone quiz is due tonight by midnight. Please make sure you did the plant walk, little short assessment there. That's super easy. It's a short video. What else? If you haven't done the secondary growth and stems quiz, try and get caught up on that. And then I'll hopefully be posting your test no later than tomorrow morning. And I know it's going to be kind of long, but you can use your notes. I'm giving you 2 days to do it. You don't have any other notes to do the next 2 days. And then I am going to give you Monday and Tuesday of next week to work on your plant portfolio. So if you haven't filled out the Google form document yet about your plant project, letting me know what areas you need help in, please do. I'm going to get to those. I'm going to answer you back each individually as I have time. And I just want to give you some time to work on that. So just be in touch about that. Let me know where I can help you. All right, let's talk about transport of sugars. So translocation, okay? Translocation is just a fancy word for transporting the food in the plant throughout the phloem, okay? When you think about the directionality that xylem sap will move, that's mainly moving from the roots upward, okay? Phloem sap, when you think about the sugary solution that's made from photosynthesis, that's mainly going to be made in the leaves, possibly the stems, but think about where that would need to be transported, okay? You're going to need to transport the sugars maybe to a developing fruit. Like if it's an apple tree, you might pass it to the apple so that the apple can become more sugary. You might even be transporting it down into the roots. We know we have things like storage roots that can store away excess sugars, or even a modified storage stem like a tuber, okay, which is a potato. All right, terminology. Well, just like when we did the carbon cycle and we had carbon sources and carbon sinks, we also have sugar sources and sugar sinks. Okay, so a sugar source is going to be a location in a plant where the sugar is being produced. Okay, or it could be where that sugar is getting broken down from a polysaccharide form into more of a simple sugar form. Okay, and then a sugar sink is a recipient location. It's the area that's going to receive the sugar. So that could be growing roots, that could be shoot tips, that could be fruit. An interesting note with the second example there with potatoes. Potatoes are going to be sugar sinks in the summer when they're storing away carbs. Okay, but they're a sugar source in the spring. It's a place where the plant can draw some sugars from. So potatoes can be sugar sinks or sugar sources, depending on what time of year we're talking about. And if I ever go too fast, just pause my video. All right, so here's what you have to know about transport of sugars. This is the pressure flow mechanism or the pressure flow hypothesis. It's a little different than how the water is transported in the xylem. You know, we said water is mainly like a pulling force. That was the cohesion, transpiration, cohesion, tension theory. This is pressure flow. I'm going to post a little animation for this. I don't want to do it in the video. I don't want YouTube to flag this as being copyright violated. But I do want you to watch the video that I post in the animation that I post in conjunction with this. I think it'll help you to understand this concept a little better. Okay, so sugar is going to enter the sieve tube members at the source, which is typically going to be your mesophyll cells in the leaf. Or remember, another word for mesophyll in the leaf is parenchyma. Okay, we have parenchyma in other parts of the plants besides the leaf. But palisade mesophyll and palisade parenchyma, those are interchangeable. So sugar enters sieve tube members. Remember, those are the main transporting cells for sugars. at the source. So if you think about where in the plant would sugars be getting made, that's mainly going to be in the leaves. And the palisade mesophyll is just one of those parts of a leaf. Why is it active transport? Okay? Because it's pumping large sugar molecules across the cell membranes and cell walls. So let's look at this picture, okay? Here we see these nice green ovals, okay? Those are your chloroplasts. So this is representing a mesophyll cell in the leaf, all right? Here's your companion cells. Remember, companion cells have the nucleus, they have the rough ER, the smooth ER, the Golgi. They have all that. The sieve tube member is largely empty because we need it to be empty so that it has more room to transport sugars. And so what the companion cell is going to do, the companion cells help with loading and unloading of sugars. So the companion cell is basically taking some of these sugars that were made from photosynthesis in the mesophyll cells, and it's loading it into the sieve tube members. Now keep in mind the directionality here. The leaves are usually in the upper part of the plant, so most of the time the movement's going to be downward here, but I guess it doesn't have to be. So whereas xylem is moving the water upwards, phloem tends to be moving the sugar downwards. Okay, just like in your body, where your arteries and veins tend to be kind of near each other, that's the case too for the xylem and phloem, which are the main transporting vessels in a plant. So once this sugar from those mesophyll cells that the companion cell helps load that sugar into the sieve tube members, the water in the nearby xylem, some of that water says, hey, there's a high concentration of solute here now. There's a bunch of sugar in there. I want to be where there's all that sugar. I want to be where the solute is. Okay, so some of this water is going to enter the sieve tube member by osmosis because the water will be trying to head towards a higher solute concentration. Now what that's going to do is that's going to increase sort of like the water pressure inside this cell. Okay, and it's going to force some of those particles to move into the next cell through those sieve tube plates on the end. Okay? So we say that sugar moves from sieve tube member to sieve tube member by bulk flow. Okay? Sugar is constantly being loaded into the sieve tube member, so sugar that is already there needs to move somewhere else. That's what we mean by bulk flow. So when you think about a place like Disney or Carowinds, and they have those like 3D motion theaters, right? You're usually moved into a room where you're watching some kind of video first. And then once your video's over, then you can move into the room with the moving seats and all that. So they're doing that so they can accommodate more people at a time. In other words, some of my people are going to be watching the video while the other people are in the theater with the moving seats. And then once those people are done, then I can move the next set of people in. That's kind of the way that the sugar is being moved in these vessels. So what are the sieve tube plates for? Those are for controlled bulk flow. It's just so we don't have this big plop of sugar just go bloop all the way into the bottom there. So the pressure flow kind of has to do with this idea that as more water comes in here, that's going to increase the pressure in this cell, and so it's going to want to go to the next cell to relieve some of that pressure. Okay, when sugar arrives at the sink, it moves from the sieve tube members into the cells there, and once again, the companion cells are helping with unloading. So this might be a parenchyma cell in a root. Okay, they make up a lot of the cortex and the pith, remember? So that might be a parenchyma cell in a root. Okay, well now that the sugar's been unloaded, water doesn't have any desire to be there, so the water is going to also exit the sieve tube members, and it's entering the xylem at a lower point. Okay, so remember that these could be, this looks like a vessel element to me. Tracheids would have the little pores in them. And then it'll be pulled back up the plant again by cohesive and adhesive forces from transpiration. So once the sugar gets unloaded, the water in there really has no desire to be there, so it's going to enter the xylem again at a lower point and be pulled up the xylem by those forces controlling transpiration. So this video or computer animation I will post along with this video. All right, let's talk briefly about nutrients for the plant. Again, I wouldn't worry about memorizing this list. You're going to get to use your notes on your test anyway. But just like we have nutrients that we need in higher amounts and nutrients that we need in lower amounts, plants are the same way. So the three most important macronutrients that a plant needs, that it needs in higher quantities, are going to be nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Those also happen to be the three elements that are added into fertilizers that you might be using this time of year to get your grass to look greener or get your flowers to bloom bigger, okay? Those are typically the three additives in fertilizers, as you'll see on the next slide. Sulfur, calcium, magnesium, also important for plant growth. Okay, there are some elements that plants need in smaller quantities, like iron, chlorine, manganese, zinc, molybdenum, and copper. Again, I wouldn't worry about memorizing that for right now, but I do want you to keep in mind that these three elements are probably the most important nutrients that the plant needs. Okay, so let's take a look at fertilizers. I know you might think, why are we learning about fertilizers? Well, a lot of people are doing yard work this time of year because they're stuck at home. So this kind of ties into what we're learning about today. We're talking mainly about plant nutrition today. Fertilizers tend to be enriched with nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So on a bag of fertilizer, you a lot of times see a 3-digit code. And it's basically telling you nitrogen is the first number, phosphorus is the second number, and potassium is the third number. And it's telling you how much of those additives are in that type of fertilizer. And so you might say, well, how do I know which numbers I want or what I need more of? Well, it depends on what you're going for. So something like this that has a higher amount of nitrogen, that's going to help the plant grow bigger and greener, okay? So if you're using a fertilizer on your grass, on your lawn, you want to get something that has a higher amount of nitrogen in it, okay? That's what nitrogen tends to help with. Okay, phosphorus tends to be in more of your like Miracle-Gro type fertilizers that you use with like potting soil when you're planting pretty blooms this time of year, pretty flowers, okay? It does help roots grow stronger, but it helps produce more flower blossoms. So when you see that Miracle-Gro and it says, oh, produces 10 times more blooms than the average fertilizer, it's because it has more phosphorus in it. Okay, and potassium, which can also be called potash, is really kind of just like a multivitamin for the plant. It helps their overall health. Most people are going to be using something with a higher nitrogen content or a higher phosphorus content, depending on what they want their outcome to be. Okay, nutritional adaptations of plants. So there are some parasitic plants. That means they are photosynthetic. All plants are photosynthetic, but these will tend to absorb water and minerals from a host. So some say that Spanish moss is an epiphyte rather than a parasite. I will count it in either category, okay? So I doubt you're going anywhere near the coast where there would be Spanish moss, but remember, you do get two pictures that you can have without an ID in them. So if you wanted to use a picture of Spanish moss from somewhere without an ID, that's fine. Mistletoe. I try and go on walks around my neighborhood every afternoon, and I think I saw some mistletoe up in a tree, and so I'm going to try and take a picture of that for you so you know what to look for. And that might be something. I know parasitic plants weren't one of our entries, but you could totally do that maybe instead of epiphyte. If you have a picture of Spanish moss or you want to use one from the internet, like I said, you can have 2 pictures without your ID in them. Or if once I show you what that mistletoe might look like up in a tree, that may be an option for some of you as well. You might be able to find that. All right, carnivorous plants. I don't know that any of you have these lying around your house, but carnivorous plants are photosynthetic, but obtain some nitrogen and minerals by killing and digesting insects. So it's important to realize that we don't count them as being heterotrophic. They're still photoautotrophs, okay? And it's okay that they're getting some nutrients by killing some insects and that, but they are primarily still photosynthetic. They're just getting additional nutrients from another source, like a Venus flytrap is going to trap and secrete digestive juices. We've got pitcher plants. You've got the corpse flower, all kinds of carnivorous plants there. Don't worry about that. All right. Well, that is our last section of notes for the plant unit. Just some reminders. Again, make sure you complete your plant hormone quiz if you haven't already. Make sure, look for your test to be posted by tomorrow morning. Could be tonight, but at the latest tomorrow morning. Keep communicating with me about your plant portfolios. Like I said, your test is going to be due Friday by midnight, and then I'm giving you Monday and Tuesday to work on your plant project. So please communicate with me. I'll be glad to help you in any way that I can. All right, signing off. That's the end of the plant unit. Miss you guys.